Yo, what up, Street Talks there? Kim, all right, some turbo thoughts for y'all. So, this one is evolving towards new definitions of street photography. So, I consider myself one of the mini OGs or the mini masters of street photography, and you know, I'm like a decade in, so I'm excited for the next decade and the decade after. So I think, I mean, my sense for like a real master or real OG is probably somebody who's been doing something for 30 years. I think that's like the thing. So like, for example, Jay-Z, Dr. Dre, maybe Eminem. I'm not 100% sure, but anyways. So my thought is, I'm kind of anti-purism when it comes to photography, street photography. I'm like, yo, we gotta drive the culture forward and we gotta evolve it. So these are my basic thoughts. One of the thoughts I had this morning was, if you take photos of somebody you know on the street, is this still street photography? And I would actually say, yeah, it is. Because what is street photography? Like, okay, I'm just gonna put it simple. Any photo you shoot when you're outdoors, outside your apartment, to me is street photography. If it's in the streets, it's in the park, whatever. And so more important than like, is this street photography or not, is more like, is it a meaningful photograph to you or not? And so even when I look at a lot of the photos that I've shot of Cindy in the streets, they are very important, meaningful photos to me, and I'm very happy and I'm very grateful that I photographed them. And it's, you know, who knows, maybe even selfies you shoot of yourself in the street could be considered street photography. Why not, right? Because I think notions of purism in street photography or photography in general, or even the tyranny of Henri Cartier-Bresson, is everyone wants to tyrannize you and, you know, essentially super force their own definition of things upon you. And this is the tyranny of philosophers, this is the tyranny of almost everybody in the world, is that everyone thinks that their way is the only way. And if you don't follow their way, somehow you're an idiot. But actually the truth is, I think people who are truly wise and people who have true wisdom know that there's so much more nuance, subtlety, and openness to definitions. And so even when people are like, oh, is that street photography or not? Maybe the better question is more of like, is that your definition of street photography or not? And also, why does it even matter? Because when people are like, oh, that's not street photography, essentially what they're saying is, I am the truth alone, and if you don't do as I do, you're an idiot. But then I think it's just like, what are the consequences? Then it's just like, okay, let's say it's not street photography. Let's say it is street photography, let's say it isn't street photography, what is the consequences? And there's like no consequences, right? Like, it's not a big deal, like nobody really cares. And so I think that we all just need to be a little bit more like honest with ourselves, and to be less judgmental, to be less critical, to be less, you know, putting up walls. I mean, I'm all for like openness, open access, like, even for me, just like in terms of the world, you know, I'm like, I favor this notion of just like open borders and stuff like that. I mean, that's just like what I personally believe in. You know, assuming like even America, right? Like, I wish we had a more free immigration policy where it's like, if you come to America and you want to work hard and generate economic wealth, yes, please come. But if you plan on coming to, you know, any country, you know, without the desire to generate new wealth and stuff, then perhaps that's not a good thing. But anyways, so even with knowledge, information, travel, access, stuff like that, I believe in more openness. I believe in more fluidity. I believe more in kind of advancing things, changing things, and bringing things upwards. So in the context of street photography, honestly, okay, insofar much I understood, almost everything is street photography. Like, as long as you just leave your house, it's street photography. You can shoot street photography in the grocery stores. Even one thing I've been doing is essentially street vlogging. So yeah, I think street vlogging, street photography, why not? Same thing, right? And maybe a better definition too is that, like, are you having fun or not? And even for me, when I try to make better street photos, it's kind of more of a fun creative constraint and challenge than anything, rather than like, you know, me trying to impress, you know, a bunch of like insecure petty people on the internet. And this is just like, you know, just my personal experiences, where all of the really famous, notable photographers and people I've met and stuff like that, essentially everybody's insecure about themselves and everyone's a little bit petty and everyone's like envious of the success of others. So like, you know, even the great Magnum photographers, right? Essentially there's just like a lot of like infighting, and everyone wishes they're more famous and rich or whatever. And even like with like internet famous photographers, whatever, like everyone's just like super petty about their like social media numbers. And like, I don't think I've really met any photographers that I've personally know that I truly admire in terms of their entrepreneurship, in terms of their vision, the depth of their vision and so forth. And yeah, I think I'm the only one, which is actually a nice thing, because it gives me hope and joy knowing that I could actually change and drive the future and the culture forward. Because people tend to think too small. People tend to think too short-headed, like Napoleon. And yeah, so yeah, I feel like this new personal rebirth of myself, this personal like vision that I got, is that like, you know, let's think beyond basic. Let us create new definitions of photography, street photography, and so forth. And because essentially, what do I believe in? I believe in like collective flourishing. You know, I'm like, you know, parts of me, I feel like I'm a little bit more of like a utopist than other folks. And you know, it's just like, philosophically, it's like how I was raised, it's my experiences, and also being an American, you know, I do really believe in democracy, open access, and all that jazz. So when it comes to street photography, don't let nobody bully you, stand up for yourself, or better yet, just ignore people. It's like, yo, if you imagine that you're like a fucking dragon, like this huge dragon from Lord of the Rings or whatever, and you had like little, like, you know, puppies just kind of like yelping at you, right? You're just like, would that even bother you? Like, you could either like just ignore it because you don't even feel it, or you could just and just like eat it, right? Or just like shoot your fire, whatever it may be. But, or like, you know, a Stoic thought, and I think this comes from Seneca. If you're this huge cliff of granite, you know, marble, rock on the side of the cliff, and there's tiny little waves hitting you, I mean, you still feel it, but it's like you harden, you cure yourself so hard that like you still feel it, but you're a lot less sensitive to it. So even for me now, from like a Stoic perspective, of course this thing still upset me or scare me or make me angry or sad or fearful, but I think what it is like to cure yourself and harden yourself, because that you become less sensitive to it. So one of my new life goals is just to be less sensitive. You still feel it, but I think in the context of just like photography, street photography, and everything in life, be less sensitive to the opinions of others and be more sensitive to what you believe in.